Fine. Okay, so I'll do it. And we'll start today. That's fine.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. We'll start today the halacha of lighting candles. And the halacha of lighting candles we divide into two. One is the time of lighting candles. When do we light candles? And the other one is how do we light candles? Where do we light candles? In the house, where we eat, guests. We have a few people together. So we'll divide it into two. This week we will talk about the times of when do we light candles. And B'ezrat Hashem next week, we'll have a key to shul. We'll have lights. And we'll also be talking about lighting candles. But that's B'ezrat Hashem for next week. So let's go and about the times of lighting candles. I don't have here Mishnah Berurah, but if you want to find it out, it's in Reish Samech Aleph 261. That's the Mishnah Berurah in Reish Samech Aleph. I brought here also the Pliny Halacha since things more short. In the topic of lighting candles, if you have questions, obviously, we have two main topics we'll be learning today. One is when do you light candles? The time of lighting candles. How did you get to 20 minutes before Shkia, 40 minutes before Shkia, the time of Rabbeinu Tam? So the first thing is when do we light candles? The second thing is after the time of lighting candles. And I saw them. Let's see. Very, very low. You can see the pilot, but you almost see the pilot. Yeah, that's the okay. So after we light candles, can we do melacha? After the time of lighting candles, can we light fire? Can we do other things? Can we do a issue the right at the Rabbanan after the time of lighting candles? So that's for the thing about the time of lighting candles. And let's begin from the beginning, from Bereshit. Why Bereshit? We have a few times in Bereshit, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker, Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, and so on. And we see in Bereshit almost for everything in the Torah, but there's a few exceptions, but everything in the Torah, the day begins from the night. In Korbanot, something different, but usually the day begins from the night. So Shabbat begins from the nighttime. And then we have to define when is nighttime. When's nighttime? Is it from Shkia or is it from Tzedek Kochavim? Around them. So the simple answer is that the nighttime starts from after Shkia, towards Tzedek Kochavim. Or, to put it differently, the day ends by Shkia. And the nighttime, the next day begins for sure in Tzedek Kochavim. And we have the time in between, which is called Ben Hashmashot, between the sun, so between the 2 days. The time between Shkia, which will also define soon Shkia, and Tzedek Kochavim, which will also define soon, that's the definition of all those things, is it's called Ben Hashmashot. And Ben Hashmashot, it's a suffix, it's a question. Is it the daytime or is it at nighttime? You can guess that we need to define sunset and we need to define Tzedek Kochavim. We also need to define Ben Hashmashot. When is Ben Hashmashot? How long does it take for Ben Hashmashot to be? So that a lot of the questions here of timing of defining. So the easiest thing to define is Tzedek Kochavim when we have 3 medium stars, which we can see. 3 medium stars. Almost an easy definition. What's a medium star? Do they have to be close to each other, or can they be far away? When a normal person sees those stars, or a person who knows what to look, like someone who's an expert, I can see 3 stars in the sky. I can't see anything. Like so who defines? So, but more or less we have a range of somewhere between 18 minutes to or 40 minutes in the winter to half an hour in the summer between of Tzedek Kochavim, the different options of Tzedek Kochavim. So it's somewhere between 15 minutes after the sun sets, what we call sunset, when the sun goes down, like under the sea, but below we can't see it anymore, and when you can see 3 stars. Now, Chazal said, the definition is medium stars, but because people will get mixed up, the definition is small stars, and then it's small stars. That's it, Kochavim. As you can probably guess, that in the summer we have longer times of light, and the winter we have shorter times of light. Also, there's a difference between the summer and the winter of Tzedek Kochavim. So it's anywhere between 15 minutes in the winter on high places like Jerusalem, or half an hour in the summer in low places, not the Yam Melach, but somewhere around the coast, somewhere Haifa, Tel Aviv, places around the coast. So that's how we get to between 15 minutes and 30 minutes. That's it, Kochavim. We'll skip a second to Motzei Shabbat. Most of the calendars have at least 35 minutes after sunset. That's when Shabbat ends. So if sun sets, let's say at 7 o'clock, Shabbat will end at 7:35, at least 7:35. And the reason is it took the longest time we have between sunset and Tzedek Kochavim. That's another 5 minutes for Mitzvah Aseh Mideoraita of ending Shabbat, of Safami Chodesh Al Kol, adding from the weekdays to Shabbos. We get to 35 minutes. So that's for before Shabbat. Let's go now to after Shabbat. Now let's go to before Shabbat. Shkia. Okay, what's Shkia? The sun goes down, right? But still, if you take pictures, I think yesterday, I think it was, we couldn't see the sun anymore, but the sky was beautiful. We still had light outside. So what's Shkia? Is Shkia when the sun itself goes down, or is Shkia when it gets dark outside, really dark outside? That's the famous argument between Rabbeinu Tam and most of the Rishonim. Most of the Rishonim, the Gran, hold that as soon as the sun goes down, that's it. That's Shkia. That's Shkia. And Rabbeinu Tam holds no, Shkia is still much, much longer afterwards, especially if you live in Europe, but Shkia can be much longer afterwards. It's 72 minutes more or less after the sun goes down. Only then starts Shkia. So that's the big machloket between Rabbeinu Tam and the rest of the Rishonim. Shulchan Aruch is paskin like Rabbeinu Tam. According to Shulchan Aruch, he can still light fire after what we call, but since most of the Rishonim don't hold like that, and the Gra also didn't hold like that, and the students of the Gra came to Israel, and a lot of the halachot in Israel somehow are connected to the Gra. You can ask Arya. Arya's father was Gra, one of the Gra students, and even if you look at Arya now, some of he's been arguing. Follow the Gra.
Predominant Ashkenazi.
It's more than Ashkenaz. Different things which we inherited from the Gra. One example.
Well, no, they were the main Ashkenazim.
The main Ashkenazim, right? Yeah.
So probably took them.
Yeah, but in Israel we inherit
Yeah.
Gra. Yeah. In Chutz La'aretz there's not so much of a Gra.
No.
One example, Morid Tal. We say Morid Tal or no? Elio, שכחתי אותו בבית. כן. תשתבו, תצטרף אלינו שיעור באנגלית.
לא מוכן לדבר בעברית, אז תלמד.
בחוץ, אוקיי.
לא מוכן לדבר בעברית.
So move inside or stay outside? What do you prefer? Stay here.
צריך להשתפר באנגלית הרב.
כן.
כמה יש בזום?
חמש.
טוב שעשית בזום, כי יש כאלה מבוגרים.
נכון.
הנה, יואל למשל.
כן. אז זה טוב. אוקיי. The funny thing is, we just talking about Arya.
יואל, ערב טוב.
ממש הרגע הזכרנו אותך. מהו את הגרעה, ואתם יודעים את הגרעה, פה אתה מגיע. זה משמיים.
תדעו לכם, אבא שלי היה מקפיד על הדברים של הגרעה, קלה כבחמורה. היה יקר, וואי וואי. טוב, עוד כנסו. אתה רוצים להיכנס?
לא, פה נשאר כאן. כן. Anyway, so the Gra holds that the sunset is what we see sunset, and that's when sunset starts. So according to, that's sunset, and somewhere between 16 minutes or 35 or 30 minutes after the sunset, that's when that's when we call Tzedek Kochavim. Okay, so if sun sets winter, for example, 5 o'clock, 5:20, 5:30 the most, that's Tzedek Kochavim. The time in between sunset and Tzedek Kochavim, between Shkia and Tzedek Kochavim, is called Bein Hashmashot.
But when it's sunset, that's when the sun goes down, or
According
when
to
it gets dark.
Yeah, according to the Gra and most of the Rishonim, as soon as the sun goes down, that's called sunset.
Sunset.
Okay, so what we call today sunset, that's what the Gra also sunset. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, when it gets dark. Well, according to the Gra, as soon as the sun goes down, and that's the common minhag today, that's called sunset. Then we have this period of time called Bein Hashmashot, and then we have a few minutes afterwards, 15 minutes, depending on the time of the year, 15 to half minutes to half an hour, we have a time called Tzedek Kochavim. And defining Bein Hashmashot is important just because it's not nighttime still. It's a suffix. The question is a day or night. It's in between. And for sure, we aren't allowed to do any melacha deoraita. We can't do any melacha deoraita on that time. It's Bein Hashmashot.
So, כן, לא שכחת את זה בבית, נפל לך? אוי, ליד הדלת. וואו, מצוין. אוקיי, תודה רבה. תדע כאן את הפרוז'קטורים.
Okay, so now I have a key. So at that time, since it's a question between day and night, you don't do any melacha deoraita. In the second half of the shiur, we'll just get to it in a few moments. We might be able to do a melacha derabanan. Might be able to do a melacha derabanan on the time of Bein Hashmashot. So just to wrap around all the definitions of time, we say that sunset, we are posting sunset is when the sun goes down. Somewhere between 15 minutes and half an hour afterwards, that's when we have Tzedek Kochavim, and we have in between the time which is called Bein Hashmashot. One more thing before we go to what melacha can we do in Bein Hashmashot, or can we do a melacha in Bein Hashmashot, is why do we light candles earlier? The time of lighting candles here is 40 minutes before sunset.
40 minutes before sunset.
Yeah, the lighting candles here will be the time which is written on the board. If sunset at 5 o'clock, or like today, I think it's 4:45, candle lighting in Ma'ale Adumim will be 4:05. The question is why is it 4:05? And in Tel Aviv, it's only 20 minutes. Haifa, it's half an hour. So how did we get to it? So there's two reasons which combine together. That's how we got to it. One, that sometimes you couldn't see the sun. It's a cloudy day. Some people were in a hurry. Sometimes you have mountains or houses around you, so you can't see the sun. So Shulchan Aruch in Reish Samech Aleph Seif Bet writes that someone who doesn't know, when the sun goes above the trees are already blocking the sun from him, so he should accept Shabbat, view it as Shkia. So as soon as the sun is low enough that the trees are hiding the sun, so that's we consider that as Shkia, because otherwise the person doesn't know exactly when sunset is. So that's already getting as close to 15 minutes or something like that before Shkia itself. There's another aspect we learn from Yom Kippur of Shabbaton, and also that the mitzvah to add from Chol to Kodesh. We should take a bit of the weekday. Hashem, He made Shabbat to be a special day. But we have an option to add a few minutes of our time and sanctify those moments. So there's a mitzvah to take a few minutes before Shabbat and a few minutes after Shabbat and can make it holy. And we can do it on Shabbat. Hashem made Shabbat holy, but we can take a few minutes from the weekday and make this holy. So we want to add a few minutes before Shabbat. So that's why we add anyway between 20 minutes and 40 minutes, depending on the minhagim of different places. And also after Shabbat, we'll add a few minutes. I mentioned this halacha, it's important. Even someone who davens mincha late, and he lights candle late, he should at least a few minutes before Shabbat. That's a few minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, a time that you can notice. A few minutes before sunset, he should stop and say, Bo'ik Allah Shabbat Maketa. I'm accepting Shabbat upon myself, and now those 2 minutes before Shabbat, I decided to make them holy. That's the halacha of Tosefet Kodesh HaChol. In some shuls, we don't do it here, but maybe it's an idea to do it here. right after we finish Mincha, and we have about 5 minutes before sunset. Chazan says, Boi kala Shabbat Maketa, and then we start the rest of the Kabbalat Shabbat. And the idea of that is to add those few minutes from the weekday, from Friday to Shabbos.
When's candlelighting?
So that's an interesting question. We'll get to it. We'll maybe answer it now. If sunset like this week is at 4:45, about 5, candlelighting will be at 4:05. But we'll be davening mincha at 4:35, and most of people in the houses will not be lighting at 4:05. Okay, most people in the house will even on summer, people aren't ready before Shabbat. Friday is always a day which is busy. No matter how you plan, will always be busy. It's a miracle, right? But for sure in the winter, people just aren't ready on time. So theoretically, the candle lighting should be 40 minutes beforehand, but before Shkia. Because that's the minhag of Ma'ale Domim, that's the minhag of Jerusalem. But Lemaise, people don't light candles on that time. And there's a big meaning, we'll get to it now, for the fact that people do not light candles on that time, and are women allowed to do melach? So we'll just get to it in a moment. People should, so candle lighting should be 40 minutes before Shkia, should be 40 minutes before sunset, but because that's the official minhag, okay? But actually it's not the minhag, and women light candles whenever they're ready. Okay, so
no, my wife lights it exactly in the time I'm ready.
So that's great.
But does that mean I have to accept it?
No, that's not. That's yeah. We'll get to it in just a moment. But for sure, even a woman who's running late, she should make sure a few minutes before sunset to light candles. Okay? And now we're getting to the question that you asked. My wife lit candles at 40 minutes before sunset. Can I do melacha 10 minutes after she lit candles? And she lit nice candles, and then she realizes we didn't plug in the plata. And she asked me to do it. Okay, so, or can I drive to shul? That's a question we'll just discuss now. And it's something here interesting. First, what happens when a person himself accepts Shabbat? It's still not Shkia, it's before Shkia. He accepted Shabbat early. Can he do melacha, d'oraita or d'Rabbanan? And what happens when the community, as the whole community, accepts Shabbat? Can someone from that community do melacha afterwards, d'oraita or d'Rabbanan? Okay, so let's start from the community answer, and that because it's more of a simple answer. If the whole community accepts Shabbat, even if it is before Shkia, like let's say all of Ma'ale Domim, there's no small communities. We have all of Ma'ale Domim accepts Shabbat 40 minutes before sunset. We don't do any melacha. Midoraita, the Rabbanan, we don't do any melacha after the community accepted Shabbat. Yeah.
Oh, we said if you're a better sponsor, you're allowed to do Rabbanan.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. That's if all the community accepted Shabbat. Okay, so we don't do any melacha. Okay, if all the community accepted Shabbat. So if you ask about candle lighting, the fact that the community only theoretically accepts Shabbat early, but I say they don't accept Shabbat early, means that we can still do melacha afterwards. We can still do melacha afterwards. For someone who didn't accept Shabbat, so there's no community who pulls him towards Shabbat, because everyone accepts Shabbat whenever they want. And the big proof is we drive to shul afterwards, we have a mincha after our wives lit candles. Okay, no one accepts Shabbat 40 minutes, or maybe even I'll say the majority doesn't accept Shabbat 40 minutes before Shkia. We accept Shabbat a few minutes beforehand. Okay, so that's when a community accepts Shabbat, and it's very rare to have a community who accepts Shabbat. And we lived in Memphis, so there were 2 big shuls there, and they had mincha at whatever, 7 o'clock, even if Shkia was 7:30. So I had a question, maybe here we do have a community who accepts Shabbat. And then I thought there's a small shul here who does their own minyan, and and they do it close to Shkia, and some people still get late. So no, so even in such a place like that, it's very, very rare to have a whole community as a community that they accept Shabbat early. Even the day we daven mincha, we finish mincha, we start lecha dodi. We really think of accepting Shabbat when we say, "Oh, boi kala, Shabbat magita," or when we say Baruch. So even today, it's very rare, even after Shkia, that the community accepts Shabbat. Even after Shkia, we usually accept Shabbat, or by saying Baruch Hu, or by saying the end of Lecha Dodi, and that is usually much after Shkia. Okay, so much after Ben Hashmashot. Now we're going to the answer of Ben Hashmashot. Okay, that's Ben Hashmashot, and then about an individual person who accepts Shabbat. In Ben Hashmashot, it's a suffix. It might be Doraita, might be the Rabbanan. Sorry, it might be day, might be night. It's a suffix with a question. That's the definition of Ben Hashmashot. So we don't do any Melacha Doraita, for sure. Even a Melacha Rabbanan, our sages said, not to do a Melacha Rabbanan unless there's a big need for it or a mitzvah. Okay, so Melacha Rabbanan, that's a Melacha Rabbanan. We can do Ben Hashmashot if there's a big need for it or a mitzvah. So you learn the halachot of Shabbat and just to know what's the Rabbanan. For example, turning on a light or turning off a light. The big thing of the right or the Rabbanan. If it's a LED light or not a LED light, once we lost power before, just the Shabbat came in, after Shkia we lost power and kind of turn on torches. You know, Americans call torches, they have a different word for flashlights. Yeah, can I use a flashlight for it? Could the right or the Rabbanan? There's a big question, big meaning, about flashlight, is it the right or the Rabbanan or Ben Hashmashot? Okay, so Ben Hashmashot, if there's a need for tzorich mitzvah, so a person could do a melacha the Rabbanan. Again, only if the community didn't accept Shabbat on that time. As soon as the community accepts Shabbat, that's it. Shabbat's in also for the Rabbanan. So we can see here the power of a community. But since usually the community does not accept Shabbat, even a Shkia, even here you can see we don't accept Shabbat even a Shkia. So usually, in many cases, after sunset, we can do a Melacha Rabbanan if there's a need for it. The same counts for when an individual person accepted Shabbat. Individual person accepts Shabbat, he can do a Melacha Rabbanan if there's a need for it, a big need for it, or it's tzorich mitzvah. For example, if I got the lights on the house, okay, there's no lights, and let's assume that the turning on the lights is the Rabbanan. It's a big question. We aren't going to go into it now. Let's assume it's the Rabbanan. He can turn the lights on. And it's obviously not so easy to eat in the dark. They can turn the light on in the times of Ben Hashmashot. Okay, if he accepted Shabbat, and it's an assume it's the Rabbanan, and the community as a community did not accept. That's the time of Ben Hashmashot, and that's whenever an individual accepted Shabbat. Another very important halacha is that if I accepted Shabbat early, let's say I went to the early minyan during the summer, I can for sure ask a non-Jew to do for me a melacha. A non-Jew is the Rabbanan, right? But I can even ask a Jewish person who didn't accept Shabbat upon himself to do for me a melacha. So women, typically, when they light candles, that's when they accept Shabbat on themselves. And so a woman, as soon as she lights candles, it's very rare cases, for her it's Shabbat. She can't do any more melacha. She accepted Shabbat. But she can ask her husband, who still didn't accept Shabbat, to do a melacha. So when I decided to accept Shabbat early, or same goes for Mosei Shabbat, Shabbat ends at 6 o'clock. It's now 6:30. I decided I want to do Shabbat Shlishit. I want to still have still fill Shabbat for another hour. So I can ask my friend who did already Havdalah to do for me a melacha, even if it's melacha d'oraita. I can light for me a fire. Needed. So that's so we'll wrap it up. And then we'll end almost ending. So we discussed today the time.
אנחנו עוד דקה וחצי מתחילים.
עוד דקה אנחנו מגיעים. כן,
What's the latest a woman can light candles?
a few minutes before Shkia, before sunset.
The latest.
The latest, yeah. For sure not past Shkia, because lighting candles is Midoraita, and as soon as Shkia comes, so we can't do any Melacha Deoraita. So we discussed the other time, we defined Shkia, we defined sunset, we found our my keys in the middle of the process, and we also said that as soon as the community accepts Shabbat, we can't do any Melacha, but if individual accepts Shabbat upon himself, he can do the Rabbanan if there is a big need of sort of.
Thank you. Very good.